So today I'll be walking you through another hook called UseReducer. So it is a state management API. So for example, in your whole project, for example, there are a total of 20 states you have to manage. So you are making a context which has almost 20 to 30 use states, isn't it? So every time for each state, so you have to write a use state, isn't it? You have to define a use state. So it sometimes becomes complicated to you that okay, this was the loading, okay, this was the error and all error states, and this was the data state. So it becomes complicated when you break out the application, isn't it? So what React has to offer is just use reducer. It is just exactly almost same as the use state only, but the thing is it basically divides your tasks. So for example, there is a manager which is maybe taking two tasks. Okay. So in the use state, what was happening was that manager was not dividing the task into the employees. So what he was in the use state, it was just like the manager doing all the work, and it was not giving. It was not just dividing the task into the employees. So in the use reducer, so what a component will do, the parent component will do, it will just define the type. Okay, so for example, for example, there is an example of rotating a hand. Okay, so rotating. So you are rotating a hand. Okay, so there is a state. Your state is changing, but so you have to define the. The parent component will just define. Okay, this is the state. You have to update it by this thing, and this just you need to the define. Okay, so for example, there is a manager and he has to make a product, maybe an annual report. Okay, so what he is giving is he gave the initial state, that is the initial data. For example, it is a yearly data, then the previous year data he will give to the employee, and how he has to update it. For example, he has to update it by, he has to update it by 1 year, the present year, isn't it? So there's the type and the state. So the manager has to give the type and the state, that okay, the type is you have to update the data by 1 year. You have to collect all the data from the 1 year, from this year, the present year, and you have to update the previous year data to your, the current data, isn't it? So but in the use state, what was happening was that the manager was taking all the data and all the states and all, and he was maintaining it throughout. So it becomes a little complicated, and it becomes a little, obviously it will make somehow the React application slow, isn't it? Somehow it will, because there are many states that there can be loading, there can be errors and all, isn't it? So what use reducer has to say is just define a reducer function. I will walk you through the all the code snippets. So there's the initial argument. You can give, in place of these two, you can just get the initial state as well. You can define the initial state. So there's the code snippet. By this you will get some idea, hang of it. So use reducer. So what is so there's the type of code you will write in the use reducer. So you have to write the state and the dispatch and the reducer and the initial state. So in the use state, you have been writing the initial state, isn't it? Can be like maybe the state can be an object, the state can be an integer, state can be a string, isn't it? So you must be defining a initial state. So just like that, I have I have just defined a state, the initial state in the form of objects. So in the object, I can define many states, isn't it? Many states, and what I am defining is a reducer function. So what is a reducer function actually doing? So there is a reducer function. So what it will take the the previous state and the action. So what is action actually? So what does the action is doing? So you can see here, that this the get this is the dispatch. Okay, so let me discuss the types as well. So this is the type. I mean, so you have to define a type. So what I was telling you that, okay, so you have to you have to update the data from the of the current the current year, isn't it? So that is a type, isn't it? So the type can be like you can define the type like, okay, it is and the update the data by 1 year, isn't it? You have the previous data, the previous year data with you, and what you need to do, get that data and then update that by 1 year. I mean, 1 year, whatever the data is, you have to just update that. So what it is doing, I have just these are the types. I mean, these are the task types. So for example, there is a login request. So actions are basically the whatever comes inside the dispatch. So dispatch get products request means get product request. This is the get product request, right? So this is exactly the thing that will be dispatched to this thing, this thing, this thing. Okay. So state is the initial state. Action will be an object. This is the action. Okay. The type and the payload. The payload can be like that I was giving an example, like you have to rotate your hand. Okay. So you have to rotate your hand by 90 degrees. So that 90 degrees will be a payload, isn't it? And the type will be rotating your hand. So there's the typical example of how we can write the type of the event. Okay, so the type is login success and the payload is the token or something. So you can give the payload or anything. It is just a function. So you have defined. So use reducer is now storing that function and the initial state, and what it is doing, what we are doing is we are just dispatching the get product. So in the get products is my object. Now this object will come here. I mean here. Oh, wait. Yeah. So it will come in this in the action. So action dot type, if it is login request, so action dot type. So action is my object, isn't it? So my it's if the type is login request, then just what you need to do is just spread the state and just make the is loading true. So where is this is loading actually coming? So this state is nothing but the state that we have defined in the user reducer, isn't it? So in the previous this thing is the user reducer initial state, isn't it? So this the state, it is just like the use state only. I mean, in the use state also you were defining a state, isn't it? But the thing is, now you are giving the control to your employees. Okay, now I won't manage this. I am giving my task to another, I mean another guy. He will do it for me. But the end point is that okay, my task should be done by the time. So there's the type. So this is how you write the logic. Okay, so whatever the action is coming. So for example, action dot type. This is the case if it is login request, if there is login success, login. So it is basically maintaining all these states, isn't it? I mean, many states. It's just a switch case, so no need to worry. So it is maintaining each and every state by detail. Okay, so whatever the action is, it will just trigger on click. So wherever you trigger, so for example, if it is a you choose effect, you can also give it inside a form or something, right? So prevent default, you are giving a login request, and after the you are dispatching the thing, then you are giving the login request and the token with it, right? And you are again giving the login failure. So login failure is what? This is the thing, right? Login failure is the object. So what it is giving that, I mean, sending this whole object into your reducer. So what it will do is it will just compare the previous state with the action now, the whatever the action is coming, right? So there's the example. So how actually this thing is, I mean, going, right? So we have to understand. So there's the as soon as you click on maybe deposit or something. So as soon as you click on deposit or something, your dispatcher, okay, let me, yeah. So as soon as you click on something, yeah, yeah. So as soon as you click on the deposit, the 100. So what it will do is it will in the dispatcher thing. Yeah, in the dispatch, it will come to the event handler. It can be an on click, or maybe you have seen the use effect just now. So in the dispatch, the dispatch, it will carry the dispatch and the action. So what is my action now? It is an object, right? So now what React will do is, so okay. So what React will do is, so now as soon as you click on the event handler, the dispatch and the action will will go throughout, and it will. So now the React has stored the reducer function, isn't it? That we have defined. So for example, the reducer function was like state, it was taking a state. The state was already there, but the thing is it was taking an action, and it was just updating those things using a switch case or something, right? So now, the dispatcher will, because the React has already the reducer hook inside it, isn't it? So it will just, now it is just having that initial state that we have already defined, right? Just like the use state one. So now the dispatch and the action will come right here, isn't it? So now the dispatch and the action will come here, and now what it will give, now it will just process. Now it will be in the queue, in the queue of updates, right? Now the dispatch has the action, and now what will happen is, now the reducer and the reducer also already has the state and the action with it, right? The initial state and the action. Now it will just come inside the React logic, right? So now what will happen is, we have the reducer stored inside the React when we did defined the reducer and the initial state, right? So that it's, so just like I have said you, uh, told you previously. So now what will happen is, now the use reducer, if we invoke the reducer and the current state, it will return a new state. So how it will return a new state? It will just compare the old state with the new state. So now the React will handle the logic inside his brain. Okay, now this is the action and this is what I need to perform. So now it will do a triple equal to that. Okay, it will just give the triple equal to. Now what finally will happen is, it will just uh, I mean it will just re-render the state, and it will just update the previous state with the new state, and the new state will go right here, and it will just update the UI, right? And now the UI will be 1100. So this is an example of writing how the use state, how the logic becomes complicated by choosing choose states. Multiple. If you have many states you have to manage, then it becomes complicated by, it becomes complicated to handle. So in that case, you have to use the UseReducer hook, because, but sometimes, obviously UseReducer is for, big purposes. But for example, if there is a small state you have to maintain, you still have to use a use state only. You can't just randomly use it reducer everywhere. But yeah, if there is a, you have to make a context of multiple states, then this is what you are supposed to do. So yeah, that's it.